Hey moms, it's Katie here, and I am super excited for this panel of lovely mamas that I have today. And today we're going to be talking about the subject that a lot of us have been talking about lately, or so I'm seeing, and that is the subject of divorce, or the big D, that some of us like to call it. So today I have, myself included, I have 4 other lovely mamas that have been through the big D and have their stories to share. And they're very different too, I believe, from talking with all of you before this. So I'm excited to dive right in. So Shayna, let's get started with you. If you could please just give a quick overview of you and your ex, kind of how you met, how long you dated before, before marriage, how kids that you have, that kind of thing.
Hi everybody, I'm Shayna. So my ex and I met when I was just finishing up grad school. We actually had worked together at Pizza Hut together as managers. And right as I was finishing up my undergrad, we started dating. And right when I finished my graduate degree, we got married. So we dated for about 2.5 to 3 years and then got married. We have one amazing kiddo. She's now 11. So we divorced about 6 years ago. And so we were married officially. I accidentally filed for divorce on our 5-year anniversary. I didn't intend to. It was definitely a mistake. We had been separated for about a year before I filed for divorce. So we were together for about 4 years in our marriage and then 3 years before. So 7 years total. And then, like I said, we have one girl, and she's pretty amazing. Nothing else right now, right? Just that.
No, you're good. Good overview. Candace.
Hello. I'm Candace. So I met my ex-husband when I was 19 years old. Yeah, bad mistakes back then. I was actually a bartender in a really shady bar, and he came in, and I thought that he was really tall and really cute, and I actually had a cat in my purse because I rescued it from outside. And let's see, we dated for 2 years. We got married. We were married for 2 years before we started having kids, and we had 3 back to back to back to back. We had Asher, then Vivian, and then Ronan. And when Ronan was about 6 months old, we decided to separate and get a divorce. And I think I'm coming up on 2 years of freedom. But yeah, so that was I'm doing good, and he's doing good so far.
Awesome. Annette?
Hi, everybody. So I met my ex, quite a while ago, and we dated for about a year and a half before we got married. Part of that was being engaged, and then we had 3 kids. They're now 17, 15, and 13, so we had kids back to back as well. And then when my youngest was about 2, we ended up getting a divorce. So that would have been in 2007, and it was a pretty straightforward divorce. Just I did it myself, so.
She has the luxury of doing that.
Yeah, it helps.
Miss Dana.
Well, I was married for 13 years, and we met at American Express. And anyway, so we got married very quickly, which I don't recommend. I think had we spent another 6 months, really, I think you need to definitely go through all of the seasons with somebody to really get to know them. And we didn't really do that. So we were married for 13 years. 7 of those I was miserable. And I can tell more about that later, but my kids who are now 15, they're 15 and 19 now, and I have 2 boys. And when we got divorced, they were 8 and 12, or when we started the process, but it took about a year.
So for me, I am just like Miss Candace over here, and I connected with my ex-husband at 19, started dating at 19. He was 5 years older than me, still is, and actually worked for my grandparents' business. So that's how I met him. We did not have any children. We were married for about 9 years, engaged for 2 years. I got married when I was 21, so pretty young. You learn a lot in between 21 and now 40, but when I got divorced, I was just about 30. Yeah, I was 30. So you learn a lot between age 20 and 30. You change a lot. So that's kind of what happened there. All right, Ms. Shayna, what types of things did you try to avoid, or what types of things did you try to avoid divorce, and when did you know it was over?
Yeah, so our big issue, there were a couple issues. I always joke, like reason 852, reason 809 that I left him. The big issue, the big overwhelming issue was infidelity. And when I caught chats the first time, there was a conversation. I asked him to go to a counselor, and kind of just let him know, like, it could happen in real life. Like, you're just talking to somebody, but this could move over to real life. When I caught it the second time, I did try to leave, and he said, no, I'm going to get a counselor. I'm going to work on it. And I don't normally snoop, but I finally resulted to snooping because something just didn't quite feel right, and found pretty incriminating texts. And that was my, like, this is it moment. We actually tried for like 2 weeks to live in the same house, but in different beds. And that just didn't work. And he kind of kept creeping in with like trying to kiss me goodnight. And the idea of him kissing me goodnight was making my skin crawl. So that was my moment. And so at that point, I just laid down. I sat down with a friend who had been divorced, and I was working with her, and I just said, I need to know everything that you did. And so we literally made a plan. Like, I sat down and I went to open a new bank account. I transferred a portion of the money to my name, left the rest for him. I made a letter. I brought my sister with me to leave him, because what I knew was that I kept trying to do it. And then he would talk me into, let's make it work for our daughter. And so I brought her with me because I knew that she knew I was going to leave that house separated. And that was really the big thing, was going in with a plan. I said, these are your bills. These are my bills. And here's the money that you have. I will leave the house for a few days. I expect you to be gone by this day. And then I came back and he was gone, and everything kind of started from there. So, but yeah, we tried a lot. I asked him to go to a counselor, and I think the big thing for me was he just never went. He kept saying, I'm going to go. And I don't want to get into private issues, but it was really necessary that he talk to a counselor. And he just never did it. And so it's pretty funny. A couple weeks after I left him, he said, well, I'm going to go to a counselor. And I said, that's great. Really happy for you at this point.
Yeah, too little, too late, man.
Yeah, at that point, I knew I was done. And like I said, the minute that he started to try to kiss me and it made my skin crawl, I knew there was no salvage. There was no way to get back from it.
Totally get it. Candace, same question.
So the thing with me is that since we got together when I was so young, I still had a lot of growing to do. And over the course of almost 10 years, I kind of grew into a better version of myself, and he just changed completely. He turned, like, in my words, kind of turned into a hippie, and I'm not those things. But also there was a lot of emotional and psychological abuse that went on. And so once we started having kids, I started seeing that I have these kids that are going to have this influence from him and me, and they look at us for examples. And so we tried going to counseling, and really what that was me being able to share my feelings without repercussion, I guess. And so I realized I still loved him, and I knew we could have gotten a few more years out of it. And maybe it could have gotten better, maybe it wouldn't have. But what I did is I looked at my daughter and I said, I don't want you to think this is how you're supposed to be treated. And I looked at my boys and I said, I don't want you to treat a woman like this. So essentially I couldn't do it. I just up and left, and I did it for the sake of my kids, because they were so young that I figured this is going to be normal for them, whether, if I stayed in it a few more years and then have to drag them through that long, shitty process. And so the day that I knew it was over was when he kept throwing the word divorce around, and I'm a planner. And so I said, play me through it, talk me through it. And he went through finances, he went through the house, he went through all these things. And the last thing he said to me was, and I'll write you a check every month, and I never want to see you or the kids again. And that was my done. So over the next few months, I hoarded furniture and I started building up my clientele, and it was just a breaking point on 4th of July where we both said, done. And that's pretty much how it went.
Interesting concept there, because I hear a lot of times that women want to try to make it work for the kids. Oh, let's stay together for the kids. But what you were actually looking at was what kind of role model are we becoming as we go along in life, you know, with all of these differences and with these problems. And I think that's wonderfully adult of you.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not like if we said we're going to make this work for the kids, it's not like the fighting was going to stop or that the animosity was going to go away. And, you know, my son, Asher, he is the gentlest, kindest little soul. And if anyone ever speaks any type of not nice to me, says, Mommy, I don't like that person, they're mean to you. And so I wasn't going to let that, you know, continue and go on and have them be tainted by a shitty childhood because Mommy and Daddy thought that this was better.
Totally get it. Totally agree. Annette, same question. What types of things did you guys try to avoid divorce, if any?
We definitely tried counseling. I mean, I think that's your normal, typical go-to. And we did that for a while. We tried to do all the homework that they would give us, the different communication exercises and things like that. But we were, I think in a way like what Candace was describing, sort of growing apart. We had gotten married in our 20s. So after 6.5 years, we had different goals, and we had our problems. And instead of really fixing them, we started arguing in front of the kids. And I knew that we were done when my 5-year-old asked, after he had stormed out of the room, why isn't anyone saying they're sorry? And that was kind of the clincher for me. And so I was also practicing law at that point, and just went and said, okay, what is it going to look like if I put this on paper? And drafted the paperwork. And we had sat down one night, and he kind of asked the same thing. What would this look like? And I laid it all out. And from there, it was definitely done.
Dana?
Yes, and I forgot to say, I got married when I was 29, so I was even a little older, so I should have known better, but, you know, and I did. I had doubts and still went through with it. But I had been unhappy for a while. It was a little bit of a bait and switch. When we first got married, he was when we were dating and he was wooing me, he was very, very generous. And after we had pretty much our second child, and we had a child right away, which is not good. Babies do not save relationships or marriages. They actually make them much more challenging. But after our second child, I didn't realize I was in an emotionally abusive relationship until I got out and I went through the parenting thing that you have to, parenting classes, and they talked about abuse in different ways. And he used financial abuse. So I wasn't allowed to touch the thermostat in my house because I didn't pay the electric bill. When we went to the grocery store, which this is kind of humiliating, but he would take our groceries and he would put the little bar down, and like my tampons and anything, my deodorant, anything feminine, like I would have to pay for that separately out of my own money. Like he would buy the family groceries and not the other. And I justified and lived that. And it's interesting. I write articles for Lifehack now. And that's my next article that's coming out, is about emotional abuse. So I'm able to, I don't think they knew, but I'm able to contribute that piece of it. But still, I was actually worried about my kids, kind of like Candace was, with the kids having to live with their dad every other week. And so I stayed because I didn't want them to be alone with him and what that was going to do to them. So I stayed for a really long time, and we really lost our connection with one another. And I said to him, we should, we needed to date each other again and maybe try to get that connection, and maybe he would shift how he felt about me. And he said, oh, well, we can date when the kids are grown. And they were 8 and 12. And I thought, I cannot live like this for 10 more years. And I wanted to go to counseling, and he wasn't interested in doing that. He wasn't willing to try. And so January, I don't know if everyone knows, but January, the first Monday in January, Annette probably knows this, is called Divorce Monday, because most people like suck it up through the holidays and they get through. And then the first week in January, they will either file or seek legal counsel. So Annette's probably really busy then, but so I did. I actually was bad. I emailed him and said I wanted a divorce, and then he called me. I was at a friend's. I decided to try to work on it for the kids' sake. I moved into a separate bedroom. My kids were asking me about that. And we tried, and then he became the most amazing guy, but I wanted him to go to counseling in September of that year, and he wasn't interested. And I sucked it up through the holidays. And at that point, it was a point of no return. Then he became this amazing husband. Seriously, he became the man I married originally that I would want to be with. And he would, buy me gifts and bring home flowers and tried to woo me and take me on dates. And the same way that, Shanna, is it Shanna or Shana? Shanna. Sorry. But she said that, it was gross or disgusting, and just like kissing him or having him touch me, it felt like I loved and cared for him as the father of my kids and all of that. But I just was not physically attracted to him. He was more like a brother than to me. And I didn't wish anything bad for him, but I just didn't want to be in that relationship anymore. And I tried for 4 months to get those feelings back. And I think for women, once they're gone, they're gone.
Totally agree. So for me, same sort of scenario. I was young, like I mentioned, we got together when I was 19, and you just grow so much in your 20s. I feel like I did anyway. Moved from a very small town, here to the city. And that was a huge change in my life and really sparked a lot of growth for me. I can't say anything negative about my ex-husband. He was an amazing man. He cooked, he cleaned, he waited on me hand and foot. He really just worshiped the ground that I walked on. When I got into the real estate business, actually, when I was married to him, he went to work every day. He supported our family. I mean, I have nothing negative to say about this man, except for I just fell out of love with him and I lost that attraction. And, like Shana said, every time he came near me just to kiss me goodnight, I literally barked in my mouth a little bit. And it's so unfair because he wasn't a bad looking man at all. He was very attractive, kind, smart, everything that you could possibly imagine wanting in a husband. I just didn't love him anymore. And I wasn't attracted to him anymore. And so we didn't do the counseling route. I didn't even suggest it, wouldn't have done it anyway back in those days. I was just done. So I kind of did something similar to Dana. It wasn't an email, it was a text. And I remember I was working from home, and I remember him coming home for lunch. And we had a very quick discussion, just like, hey, here's how it's all going to roll out, kind of like, Annette said and Shana said, Dana said, and that was it. And I went back upstairs to my office, and I could see, we lived on a cul-de-sac, and I could see him just sitting and just sobbing in his work truck. And I felt so horrible, but there was just no way I could live with that anymore. And I could be unhappy, and it wasn't his fault, you guys. It wasn't his fault at all. So why, the other side of me felt like, well, why trap this man, this perfectly amazing human that could be somebody else's Prince Charming? Why trap him in a relationship with me? And so that's kind of where then things all went from there, basically. Next question, did you use an attorney or did you go another route? And if you could just please explain if you used an attorney or went another route, kind of what those approximate costs are, if you're comfortable with sharing that.
Yeah, so I like to say I had good divorce role models. My parents divorced when I was 10 and 8. And when I was 10, we all went on a family vacation together. Not in a romantic way. My mom couldn't afford vacation on her own. My dad couldn't afford vacation on his own. So we all just went to Disneyland together, which, as you know, I love Disneyland. So I always had a great role model with the way they interacted with each other, and that it didn't, even though there was infidelity and we knew that, It didn't need to be a fight all the time. So I went in with that mentality and started by just saying, can we agree on some things? And so I did a lot of research. I'm the kind of person who likes to do things myself. And what I researched was that we could get married or we could get divorced by default. So we did a default divorce. So what that means is I put the whole plan together. I filed for divorce and I let him know if he agrees with everything that I put in that divorce decree, which we did work on together, including our parenting time and everything. I also said no to child support. I was making more money than him. So, and I grew up in a family with child support, and I saw the contention that child support created with children, where it becomes about money and not about anything else. I also didn't want anyone to come back and be like, well, you went to Vegas, that's my money. So I was like, no, I don't need it. We're fine. So with the default divorce, what I did was I served him. He had I believe 60 to 90 days to respond. As long as he didn't respond at all in that time period, he would not have to pay for the response. And then I could go to court after that period and say, I'd like a default divorce, which is everything I put in this document. He has not contested it. So I'd like for that to become our official divorce. And that was it. The judge kind of looked at me sideways when I told him I didn't want child support. He was a little confused by our parenting plan. My ex-husband actually lived in another state. He lived in Las Vegas. And so my daughter was so young that we were sending her back and forth. She would go for 3 weeks and stay with me for 5. So for that period of time, we had a very kind of funky child arrangement, but it worked for us. And that was really it. I mean, everything was in writing. We agreed beforehand. We didn't need mediation. We didn't need a lawyer. And I went in. I said, this is what I want. The judge said, sounds great. And we were divorced. And it was really fast. And I think I paid, like $350 total. I paid to file for divorce, and that was it. And I had to serve him. I think that cost like $100.
It's nice when you can agree.
Yeah. And we were really lucky in that regard that we agreed. And I probably gave more than I should have, with the knowledge that fighting it was going to create more cost, make it harder. You know, I took on all the credit card debt, but told him you can't have any of my 401k, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So he got to leave pretty free and clear. He got to keep the truck that was in my name. And so we just transferred that over. So he got a lot, probably a little bit more than he would have had we gone through mediation, but I still feel good about it because I think that, 1, we didn't pay a lot for the process. And 2, I think that once you start going through the mud and you start really kind of divvy up everything, it creates more problems and more costs. So I'm super happy with the way it turned out.
Awesome. Candace?
Yeah, I actually had a really easy divorce. We sat down and we talked about everything. Part of our relationship was that everything was already separate. Like, we never shared a bank account. Never had, like, the only thing that was in both of our names was our cars. And obviously, you know, he's going to keep his truck. I'm going to keep my mom car. There was nothing really there except for the time with the kids and child support. And, as I said before, he didn't really want the kids. And so the biggest part of my divorce that got a little sketchy was parenting time. And, so he just wanted them 1 day a week. And I sat there and I said, like, that's it, like, just 1 day. And he said, yep, just this, and this is what we're going to do. And so I had to sit down, I had to think about it. And I'm like, if you're going to only have them 1 day a week, then I want sole custody. And he said, I'll give you sole custody if I never take them overnight again. I said, okay. Like, that's fine by me. It means I don't have to worry about who's at your house or what you're doing. And because in my mind, I didn't want to have to wait around for his answer, no matter where he was in his life, to get an answer for school or medical or anything like that. I can go ahead and make the decision for these kids that I have 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. We filed, and, like, we wrote everything up together. And then he took it to a lawyer himself that way, just to make sure that everything was done properly and everything. And so I don't know how much that cost him. And I know I didn't pay anything. So I was just happy to make it over. But I will tell you, in that whole process, the hardest thing was going to the lawyer's office. I'm getting all like choked up over it. Going over these papers and seeing 10 years of my life just go away.
Mm-hmm.
And then, sorry.
That's okay.
And then seeing how these 3 wonderful kids, I had my baby with me because the other 2 were in school. And I just looked at Ronan, and I looked at the papers, and I'm like, this is just awful. And the lawyer herself, she's like, she didn't understand the parenting plan either. Like 72 days a year is what he's signing up for. And I think the hardest sound that I've ever heard in my life is this stamp. So, but how was that?
Oh my gosh. Miss Annette.
So I didn't have an attorney. I ended up paid the filing fee, $349 or whatever it is, and we ended up doing a default divorce too. We had already discussed what the terms would be. I had shown him what the paperwork was, what the decree would outline in the parenting plan, and we agreed to do a 5-2-5 schedule. And actually, when we separated, we started following that. And so my kids have been on that schedule for 12 years now. And I know he had consulted some attorneys. They had actually called me and said, hey, I spoke to your husband. And he ended up not getting an attorney. We didn't have any property or really any assets to fight over. And so we scheduled a default hearing. The judge looked at the decree and said, oh, wait, it's a little too specific. I'm not going to be able to enter it unless he's here to say that he actually agrees. And so he ended up coming to the default hearing, and it's awkward. It's not what anyone wants. No one wants to have their marriage in that way. But we did it, I guess, in a pretty amicable fashion, without attorneys, and got it done fairly quickly. So it can be done. And since then, we've had our issues. We've both hired attorneys at times to try to resolve issues, but it's never resulted in a trial. So I think I'm lucky in that sense too, that for the most part we get along, we have the same objectives for our kids, and focusing on them, I think we do well. So that was kind of the process I went through.
Dana?
So my ex was a little more challenging and bitter and hurt by the whole thing. And I had envisioned that we would, and I even talked to him about this, like at Christmas time, kind of prepping him for this, saying, oh, can't we, for spring break, we could go on a cruise together, and you get a room and I get a room, and we take both the kids so we don't have to share their time. And he was so on board with that and all of that, but he didn't think I was fully serious, I think, at the time. So not going to happen. When we got divorced, he wouldn't let me in the house, like changed the locks on everything, like wouldn't even let me step in, like would slam the door on my face, things like that. It cost us about $20,000 each for the divorce, because I actually really was pretty much a stay-at-home mom. I had some side businesses, but not any guaranteed income. I did get some support from him in the beginning, and the judge ruled for that he had to pay $10,000 of my attorney fees, which he did not. So I had to take him to court, garnish his wages, and get the money. So we've gone back to court now. I'm trying to think. Last summer, I had to take him back to court again also, because he told me I could take my son to Spain for the summer for 2 weeks. And after I already booked airline tickets, made arrangements with like my work and things, and he told me I couldn't. He needed to go to summer school, which he's super smart. He didn't need to go to summer school. So we had to go, and the judge did rule in my favor, but it cost me money and the filing fee and all of that. I don't get any, it's interesting to me in Arizona, spousal support is a lot more than child support. Child support is nothing. And so I only get $200, like $212 a month. Now I could get more, but I don't want to poke the bear. And he makes 3 to 4 times as much as I do. And I just don't want to go back. And now my son, my 19-year-old's in college. My younger son is still, we have 3 more years. He's a sophomore. And they, I know my boyfriend gets really frustrated sometimes because he doesn't pay his fair share. And I said, I'd rather just pretend he doesn't exist and not go through that, because the money isn't worth it. Right now I have him full time. He only goes to his dad's every other weekend. So it used to be 1 week on, 1 week off. And we found it's better, Harrison, with us. He's doing much better. And it's a lot more work for me and money and time. But again, I could take him back to court and get $1,600 a month, and I choose not to, because I just don't want to poke the bear. And I'm worried that our parenting plan is still 1 week on, 1 week off. I just don't want him to enforce that, because I know my son is much happier and better with me full time.
So my story is kind of similar to a couple of you. He totally hated me for leaving him, right? But we sat down and agreed upon how things would be split up. And at that point, I had accelerated in my business. So kind of opposite to you, Dana, I was worried that he was going to come after me for spousal support. So I was like, sure, have the house that I just dumped 20 grand into to upgrade. Sure, here's half of our bank account, or half of our savings. I basically took my car, my clothes, and like my computer, and I was out. I feel like that kind of helped it to be a little bit more amicable, because he got a lot more than he probably thought he was going to get. I don't even know if they're around anymore, but we actually went to the divorce store and just had them type it up and send it in. It cost me $400 once, we had both signed. Excuse me. And as far as time frame, like how long the overall process took, I left on March 17th. I'll never forget walking out the door on St. Patrick's Day. And by the end of June, we were divorced. So once we agreed, we put it on paper, we sent it in, we were good to go in about 90 days, I think. Annette could probably tell me if that sounds about right. Shayna, about how long did the overall process take for you?
By the time, so like I said, I accidentally filed on our anniversary. I left in November, filed in June. It just took a while for me to get through the process of filing. But once I had filed, everything was cemented by November. So it was about, I guess that's about 4 to 5 months of the entire process. I wasn't necessarily running super fast to get it done. I knew we already had an amicable split. We were physically living apart. He was in a different state. So it wasn't as hurried of a process. But yeah, about 4 to 5 months of actual paperwork.
Candace?
Let's see. We filed in January, and I think what took longer than the typical 90 days was the confusion of how, I guess, amicable we were being, and how less of parenting time he was getting, and how I wasn't asking for anything. I didn't go for his 401k or his stock options. All I wanted was a little money for the kids and for him to hold health insurance for him. And because I figured the better life he has, the better place he's going to be in, and the better we're going to work with each other in the long run. And so he filed in January, and it was all said and done. I got my official paperwork by April.
Annette, about how long was the process for you?
So I want to say we filed in October, and because it was a default, we waited out. Basically, the waiting period is 60 days, and then it was done by early January. So default is definitely a quick way to go, or, you know, at least reaching agreement. So it was pretty fast.
Ms. Dana?
It's funny. I moved out on April 17th. So, and I think I filed sometime in May. And this is the funny thing. My divorce was final on April 17th. Is that weird?
Whoa.
I didn't even know. I got it in the mail like probably a couple weeks later, but I'm like, wow, that is like 1 year exactly to the day of moving out. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. How is your relationship now with your ex? Do you guys get along? Why or why not? Shayna?
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. We get along pretty well. My ex-husband and I, like I said, we started with the foundation of just knowing that it was always for the best interest of our child. So I don't know that we've ever had a true argument other than maybe a little bit of frustration back and forth. One thing I do that probably drives him completely batty, but I learned this from my mother, which is I'm friendly with his girlfriends. So we're friends. And usually when they end up leaving him, we are still friends. Because these people, especially he tends to kind of build what we call an instant family. He tends to date women who have children. And so what I know is that they're going to continue to be part of his life. And for my daughter, these children are her sisters. She doesn't have any siblings with me. So for instance, his ex-fiance in Las Vegas, they split a couple of years ago. We're still friends. We've gone to dinner together, and she calls my daughter about once every week just to stay in touch, because to my daughter, this is her stepmom. And I learned that from my mom, you know, that once you're family, and you don't divorce family. So that helps us a lot. You know, it keeps the relationship nice, that when I need something, I'm on a group text with him and his girlfriend, and it's never contentious, because these women, they have nothing to do with the reason that we split. They're the women that are in his life. They're going to be the people who are involved in my daughter's day-to-day life. We split every other week. So we have 100% joint custody, and every Sunday night we trade. And so, you know, we were able to work through things, and we split bills straight down the middle. He handles swim practice. I handled Girl Scouts. We split school lunch every week. So, you know, and the other day we went out to dinner, and he works at a restaurant. He's the manager. And I told the waitress, I'm like, could you call him over, you know, tell him his ex-wife's here. And she's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm like, don't worry, we're friends. And he took $50 off the bill for us. So, you know, we do try to really keep that friendship. There's one thing I always tell people, I'm like, we didn't work out. That's fine. But there's no reason to just make a relationship contentious. I know that sometimes that doesn't always work, and people, what I can do is I can put in my input, which is that I'm going to be friendly. I'm going to be fair. I'm going to look at the situation and say, how does it impact my child? And at the end of the day, that's productive for everyone involved, and that's my goal. But yeah, we get along perfect.
I love hearing that, because I hear a lot of the opposite of that. So Candace, same question.
I actually have a great relationship with him. I get a lot better with him now than when we were together. But I actually thought this morning, knowing that I was going to do this today, and I called him. I woke him up, I called him, and I said, hey, so I'm doing this thing later, and I think we have a good relationship, and I like you. Do you think you could tell me if you like me, or how I am as an ex-wife? Because I think I'm awesome. And he actually made me like cry. He's such an ass. But he sent back, I'll read it. He said, Candace loves the kids dearly. She makes it fun to work together and communicates to make sure they have everything needed for each week. It helps to tell each other funny stories about what the kiddos have done recently. I have a sense of gratification knowing how the kids progress between visits. We are still partners in a family in a way that benefit each child. We agree that it's important to continue working together cohesively and put conscious effort into doing so. I believe this greatly contributes to the happiness between us and the kids. So, granted, there's been a few times that I've absolutely gone white girl crazy and, you know, broke down crying and saying, I need help and this is too much and all that. But anytime I've ever called him, hey, I have a meeting, or hey, I have a last minute appointment. Hey, I really want to do this. I need your help. I would say about 9 times out of 10, he steps up and does so. But we have family birthday parties together. I actually have 2 stepkids that are much older, and I still have great relationships with them. And so I'm able to go to those things with him, and it's not awkward or weird. You know, we just work. We just work together, because why be assholes to each other when there's really no reason? Like, it's done, it's over with, and here we are.
Exactly. What's the outcome going to be when you're assholes to each other?
Right.
It's not going to be pleasant for anybody or the kids. I love that.
Yeah.
Annette?
Oh, sorry. No, go.
Oh, you're fine. Annette?
Oh, I would agree with Candace. I think working together is kind of the operative phrase, and that's the ideal. I don't think I would call us friends, my ex and I, but we have a really good co-parenting relationship. It has taken some time to get there, but I think, you know, he's moved on, I've moved on, he's remarried, I've remarried, and I think we are now just really focused on bringing up our girls as best as we can. And it really sort of came to a head just recently, actually. My 15-year-old, our 15-year-old, ended up getting caught doing something really, really naughty. She was drinking at a friend's, and I thought, oh, great, you know, I don't want this to create issues with my ex, but I texted him the minute I found out what was going on, and he drove over and had his wife, you know, his new wife and her stepmom come over to our house, and my husband and him and everyone basically just sat down, the 4 of us, to figure out, well, what do we do? How do we deal with this situation? How harsh do we want to be? Are we going to be consistent on punishment between the 2 households? What should we do? And you know, it was I think it was really healthy. It was really good to be on the same page. And then even better, he turned around and went and picked up my daughter and brought her back to my house, so that she walked in seeing the 4 of us and just kind of surprised, like, hey, we know what's going on. And it really sent a message that the 4 of us could be on the same page. So I think we have a good co-parenting relationship. I think I'd even say that extends to the step parents now, even though it's taken us a while to get there. So
I love hearing these stories, ladies, because I was 2 when my parents got divorced, and I'm now 40. So for the last 38 years, they have hated each other, and all of their spouses and girlfriends and steps that they've brought into my life for me to love, yet my other parent hates them. Takes a little bit of therapy to get on the other side of that. Let me just tell you. So I'm really, really proud of you ladies for being the bigger party and being able to do that. Coming from a child's standpoint, it's really, really important. And I would have loved to, in my teenage years, walk into your living room and see my mom, her spouse, my dad, his spouse, to have sort of a family meeting. So I think that's pretty cool. Dana?
Yeah, listening to that, I'm really envious of everyone else, and that's so great, because we've had a lot of challenges along the way with disagreeing. A lot of my exes, everything is about money with him, so that's really challenging. Like, my son's going to school, and it's expensive. He has like 30,000 in grants, but I get so tired of my ex texting me going, I'm only paying $10,000 a year, you know, for his schooling. And I want to reply back and go, yeah, I know, I'm paying 20,000 a year. You know, I'm paying double, and he makes a lot more money than me, and his new wife, they have a lot of money together, and they could easily pay it all and it wouldn't matter. but I don't do that. I do what's best for my kids, you know, but it's really hard for me to see them. They don't like to be in the same room with us or anything. We have done that recently. My ex was upset that my kids didn't get up on Father's Day and told them to come to my house. So they took an Uber to my house on Father's Day because they didn't get up when they were supposed to on Father's Day. And I told my son, I go, why don't you take an Uber to the restaurant? Just suck it up, you know, for your dad. It's Father's Day. Because anyway, it's really stressful, but I feel bad. They don't like being in the same room, but we all went over and had a family talk. So all of us, including the kids and my, you know, Marty and his new wife, or not new wife, they've been together a couple of years, but we all had a talk about it. And that was good. It was really challenging and difficult because we disagree on parenting from what they agree on. And so it's really hard to do that. But my ex-husband actually apologized to the kids and said, I shouldn't have kicked you out. And my older son, who's 19, was like sobbing, you know, I mean, so it was really emotionally healing. And it's interesting because my ex-husband, he'll surprise me sometimes. My first relationship after the divorce, I dated somebody who got leukemia and he died. And the first card I got in the mail was from my ex-husband. And I was shocked. And so then I think I get these glimmers of hope. Oh my gosh, he's changed, you know, he's different. And then nope, something else happens. And, you know, I really think what it is, he's not a bad person because I wouldn't have married somebody bad or awful, but we grew apart. We just grew differently. And I know he's just still really hurt. And I think angry that I left him. And I think he holds grudges in relationships and he just hasn't gotten over that. And I hope that one day he will. And I just try to be as amicable as I can for my kids' sake. That's the hardest part.
Absolutely. So for me, my ex-husband and I do not have a relationship at all. It ended the day that our divorce paperwork went through. Mm-hmm. He hates me, did then, probably still does now. I'm blocked on anything social media, all of that stuff. So luckily we don't have any children together because who knows how that would have went. But yeah, we don't have a relationship whatsoever. I have no idea if he's even still around or what's going on with him. Oh, well, right. What would you do differently, ladies? Briefly, anything? Shayna?
I probably wouldn't have waited a year and a half. Obviously hindsight's 2020, but I gave entirely too much time for somebody who just really wasn't invested in our relationship. You know, he wanted the relationship, but he didn't want to have to put the work in. So I probably just would have left after the second occasion, but you know, otherwise not much. I think that, you know, we really have, like I said, we have a good relationship, and my daughter she's such a great kid and she's so well adjusted. So you know, I think that I would just keep on along this path of just really doing everything invested for her and take the two of us out of it.
Candace?
It's a hard question for me because, like, I don't know, dating really sucks when you're a single mom with a mouth on you with, you know, a whole bunch of tiny terrorists as kids. So on certain days, I'm like, man, it really didn't seem that bad. And plus now he's in like super good shape. Like his butt looks fantastic. So, but
I'm nodding yes.
Yeah. See, I'm sure someone will see him every now and then. Like I think there's a picture of us on MOMnation of us doing a family back to school trip. And yeah, he's not that bad. But anyways, I really don't think I'd change anything. I think the timing was good and everything just went so smoothly. But maybe I think I'd have probably talked out my emotions with more confidence before we actually decided to get a divorce, because because now I don't have that to look back on to say, okay, I definitely tried every last little single thing. But I was just so scared of the response that I would get that I just didn't open my mouth, and I just went along with it and ended up pushing him away further and further and further and be like, okay, now we're done. And so here we are. So I don't think I would change much.
Annette, how about you?
I I don't really have anything that I would change. I mean, I think I made mistakes during the marriage, and I would definitely maybe redo some of those things, and I think he maybe feels the same. As far as the divorce process goes, I don't think I would have done anything differently, except maybe, I mean, we had tried couples counseling, but I think I would have gotten counseling for myself. He had remarried very quickly, about a year after we were divorced, and it was just hard to swallow. So I think if I had maybe more support and dealt kind of with the emotional side of things, we wouldn't have had conflict after our divorce. But time, I think, heals a lot, and that's the only thing I can think of really wanting to change.
Dana?
Well, other than not getting married, I can't go back on that one. I think I have been unhappy for a really long time, and I was really afraid of what being divorced would look like. And I wish that I would have earlier spoken up when I first became unhappy, to really try to make a shift. I kept trying to change myself, thinking, oh, if I change, things will get better. I wish that we would have put a little more time and effort into our relationship. I think we lost ourselves in our kids, and we put our kids first. And so what happened is we lost our affinity for one another, and we, instead of lovers, we became kind of roommates, and we lost that romantic connection. And it's hard to stay married without that. And so I really try to make that in my current relationship. That's my number one priority, even over my kids. They're going to grow up and move away, but my job is to be a great example for them of what a great relationship and what a great partnership looks like. So in hindsight, I would just have done, I wish I would have done that with my ex, or at least attempted to see if it would have worked and got help earlier, instead of waiting for 7 years or so long to make that move, to at least tried a little bit harder and made it to see if it would have worked.
For me, the timing was right. I guess if I would want to do anything differently, I wouldn't have been such a bitch. I was really not nice to him, nor was I very nice to his new girlfriend. Just like you, Annette, my ex-husband got married within a year from our divorce. Not even that. It's actually with a year from me walking out and leaving. So it hadn't even been a year that we had been officially divorced yet. I wish I would have been a little bit more kind to her. She actually, funny story, I won't get into it now, but she actually was a friend of ours. Her and her husband were too. So kind of an interesting little story there, but she didn't deserve what I put her through whatsoever. And when I want to be, I can be a real bitch. So I would have done that differently for sure. Last question, ladies, and I so appreciate you hanging in here with me. You guys have been awesome. What advice do you have for other moms that might be facing this? Shayna?
I think the big thing for me was have a plan. Go in knowing exactly what you need, and be really clear about it. Have backup, have support. I think honestly, had my sister not been there the night that I finally left, I don't think I would have done it, because I did want to continue to save our marriage, even though I knew it wasn't working. So having that person there. So once I knew it was there, it was like I had to do it. And the last thing is just put your children first in terms of your decisions. A lot of times I think the biggest frustration, and we see it all the time on Facebook, is like, I don't want my husband to have parenting time because I'm mad at my husband for cheating, or I'm mad at my husband for anything that he does. And yes, there are times that the child is in danger, and that is the most important time to take away parenting time. But you really, I think parents, mothers especially, really need to ask themselves, like, is it beneficial to take the father out of my child's life? In my case, absolutely not. He's a great dad. He had problems, but his problems had nothing to do with his ability to parent. So I think that you really have to sit down as a mother and ask yourself that question honestly. Because if you can't come up with an honest answer that doesn't involve your own feelings, then it probably is best to let the father be as involved as he wants to be in that life.
I love that advice. Candace?
I think Shayna hit the nail on the head for a lot of it. For me, taking on 3 kids on my own was a lot, because I went from having I don't know, less than $1,000 a month in bills to like way over probably like $3,000. And I was only working 1 day a week at the time. So my biggest fear was, am I going to be able to make this work? And so and I'm sure a lot of stay-at-home moms or just anyone with like, the keep yourself busy job, that's the biggest fear, is how you're going to support you, your kids. And I'll tell you one thing, as long as you put it out there that it's going to work, it's going to work. It's the same thing as when people ask me how the hell I do this with 3 kids. I'm like, I don't have a choice. So once you make a decision, know that you don't have a choice but to make this work and to make that new life for yourself. And know that you have every bit of possibility and power to make that good. I love my life now. I love my kids. They're happy. He's got a good life. We have a good relationship. And it's because there was no other option. And as long as you kind of look at it like that, to where this is done and all I'm going to do is go forward from here, then you're going to do it and you can. So don't let a fear such as money or where you're going to go, keep you from doing that and finding your happiness. Because like Shayna said, if you have a plan, go by it and it'll work out.
Great point. Don't let fear stop you. Love it. Annette?
I would agree with what both ladies already said. I think it's really important to go into the divorce with a plan. Obviously, talk to an attorney. You can get a lot of free advice. A lot of attorneys do free consults. So at least you know what your options are and what your rights are. I would say that as far as parenting goes and trying to figure out what's best for your kids, you have to remember that to them, even though you're living in 2 separate households, you're still one family for your kids. So if you look at things from their eyes, kind of like what Shayna was saying, I think then you can reach agreements and you can figure out what's going to be workable and best for them. I think that's just ultimately that's the most important part, especially if you have to deal with kids. If it's property issues, then hopefully everyone is informed and you know what your rights are, and if you give anything up, you're okay with that. So I think my advice is have information, know what you want, and do your best to be objective and look at things through your kids' viewpoint.
Awesome. Thank you, Annette. Dana?
Okay, yeah, all the ladies have said some great things, so I'll try not to repeat that. I do like the don't be afraid if you know you really need to get a divorce. But I guess if somebody is out there and they're on the fence and not really sure, should I stay or should I go? Some things I was kind of writing some notes is, don't be sure that you're not throwing in the towel too soon, that you have exhausted all options. Because honestly, I mean, while divorce is hard, I think sometimes it's easier to, I'll just start over with somebody new, and the grass is always greener, and that may not be the case. As Candace said, being single and having kids and being a single parent is hard. You have less money, but still the same household bills and things like that. So there's a lot of things to take into effect. So just make sure that you really, if you fell in love with somebody and you've had children with them, especially when you have children involved, just really make sure that you can't get on the same page and keep that romance and passion alive, and make sure that you've exhausted all options. And I think what happens a lot of time is that we're busy with work, life, kids, that we forget to take care of our most important relationship, our marriage, because if you don't have that foundation, then you won't last for the kids. So I know I'm really a proponent. So make sure if you're not, date your spouse, make sure you're going on at least 1 date a month to keep that magic and spark alive.
I love it. And I'm last. So for me, you heard about the whole I was a mega bitch thing. That didn't work out very well for me. So my suggestion is just, it's a very emotional time, obviously, but try to keep, the negative talk, try to keep the cut downs and the the wise remarks and all of that stuff at a minimum, if not completely eliminate it whatsoever, it will be much easier for you. Everything's a negotiation, right? And it's a little difficult to negotiate with the bitch, and you don't want to, and you don't want to give her things. So don't be the bitch. Also, I think it's really important for moms out there to get some support when they're going through this type of thing. And that's like positive support. So talk with somebody who is, a positive influence on your life. Maybe that's a professional therapist or something like that, but talk with somebody that can kind of help you through it. And that would be my advice. Had I gone through it again, I would have done both of those things. So, all right, ladies. Well, thank you all so much for being here. This was truly informative. Thank you for sharing your stories, your advice, and all of that jazz. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.